Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, How Grassroots Automation Speeds Digital Success. I'm Lori McLaughlin, Senior Editor Digital at MIT Sloan Management Review, and I'll be moderating the event. Today's program is sponsored by HCL Software. Now onto the webinar. With the help of today's automation tools, leaders can tap into the ideas and experience of their non-technical citizens to speed up transformation work, but you need to know how to properly design, fund, and champion these grassroots automation efforts. Our two speakers today have real-world best practices to share to help you do just that. So let's meet our speakers. Ian Barkin co-founded the RPA consultancy, Symphony Ventures, and now advises tech services firms in his role as founding partner of 2B Ventures. He also serves as an external advisor to Bain and is on the advisory board of the George Mason University Intelligent Automation Initiative. Ian co-authored the book, Intelligent Automation, Welcome to the World of Hyperautomation, and he has numerous LinkedIn learning courses on RPA and AI. Tom Davenport is a distinguished professor of information technology and management at Babson College, a lecturer at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and a fellow of the MIT Initiative on the Digital Economy. He is also a senior advisor to Deloitte's Chief Data and Analytics Program. He's published 23 books, most recently co-authoring All In on AI, How Smart Companies Win Big with Artificial Intelligence. Welcome, Ian and Tom.
Thanks, Lori. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll kick off. First and foremost, it's a thrill to be here presenting to this audience. It was exciting to have this article published in the MIT Sloan Management Review, and we're excited to share some of our findings. We've done more research since we published the article with the audience here today. I will also add that I'm excited about this because I am an MIT alum, and despite their questionable acceptance criteria, I do think highly of the institution and the publication. So today, as you'd said, Lorianne, we're going to talk about how grassroots automation is speeding digital success. And before we get started, we're going to make this collaborative and put this platform to the test by starting with a poll. So I'm going to lead everyone through that. We'll go to our next slide and kick off the poll to get a sense of the lay of the land and how much people are familiar with this topic. So I will read the poll question and we'll pop the poll up as I do so. So the poll question is as follows. Are you familiar with the concept of citizen development or citizen data science? And your options are A, yes, very familiar with it. B, yes, somewhat familiar with it. C, sort of, I've heard of it, but don't know what it is. Or D, no, I've never heard of it. And we'll put up the results as they come in. And I will narrate. We'll see what happens.
I tried to say I was very familiar with it, Ian, but it wouldn't let me. So.
Did you? Let's see. Here, I'll say I'm very familiar with it too. So that's great. Okay, so there's a good spread there, actually. Over a third of folks have not heard of it thus far. We're more coming in. Answer the question. We'll vamp for a few more seconds here as people are.
We're happy that you showed up anyway, despite never having heard of the idea. So.
Yes, that's right. That's right. You just the speakers were so compelling that I decided I'm coming no matter what they're talking about. So this is interesting. So thus far, 14% very familiar with it, but a lion's share of folks are more towards the I know a little bit about it or I don't know about it at all. And that's great because hopefully by the end of this, you answer this question differently. Okay, as results are coming in, I'll sort of move on through the presentation. I'll start by stating three different things that I imagine everybody's heard. First and foremost, that digital transformation is an imperative and you need to do that to succeed as an enterprise. The second is a famous quote about how software is eating the world. And third is the concept that every business is now a software business. And I'm pretty certain that most of you have heard all three of those. But it begs the question, where are we getting all of the software people if all of those realities are true? And so that's what's compelled some of what Tom and I have been discussing for a few years in the research that we did behind this article and that we continue to do. And as we go, you'll see at the end too, we'll solicit input from anybody on this presentation who has experiences and would like to share them. We'd like to hear them from you. Ultimately, there was a very, if we can pull the poll down and we will proceed. Thank you so much. So, Wall Street darling, NVIDIA, their CEO.
Who is that person, Jensen Huang? I've never heard of him.
Exactly. He is dominating the news headlines right now, especially because of obviously how well their stock is done. You want them in your portfolio, but also the role that they're playing with their technology to effectively be the foundation for this Gen AI movement. And he was on stage a few weeks ago, and he made a comment about how everybody in the world is now a programmer. He went on to expand on this, and ultimately what his point was is that his industry needs to create computing technology such that nobody has to program. Nobody has to know Python or C++ anymore, but that they can program with a language that is quote unquote human, in his words, with language that's human.
Don't you think he stole that line from us, Ian? Because we had another article called "We're All Programmers Now" in a publication that will not be named on this webinar. But I think he clearly took that from us.
I would back that theory because it's so nicely self-serving. But what he ultimately went on to say too is he expanded on that concept was that what it's enabling enterprises to, what it's enabling people to do is to tap into their domain expertise to solve domain problems. And so he gave examples like solving problems in digital biology or in education of young people. Ultimately, the people who understand the domain, who understand the problem, now will have the expertise to utilize technology that's readily available to them because we're all programmers now, because programming language is becoming more human. Similarly, I think it was yesterday, just a few days ago, Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, I think he's currently CEO. That seems to vacillate quickly. But he was in yet another interview with Lex Friedman, and he made the point, and I'll quote him. He said that people will program a lot, but I think it'll be in a very different shape. Some people will program entirely in natural language. And that's the same spirit of what Jensen is saying here, that technology is becoming more human and more people are able to play a role in this software eating the world, every company, a software company reality. So that drove our sort of interest in this concept. And we've done a lot of research, spoken to a lot of enterprises. You'll see some case studies very soon into this concept of who are these people? Who are these domain experts? And you see a term being used quite frequently in calling them citizen developers. Now we subsegment it, but for the sake of a high-level definition, we'll call them citizen developers here. And ultimately, what that means to us is those are people harnessing their domain expertise, like Jensen said, and a creative spark. And that's also what he was referring to, of just having an awareness of an issue, an opportunity, a problem. So using their domain expertise and that creative spark, but these people are non-IT people. They're not part of a product development team. They're not coders, but they're in your organization and they're able to use the modern, easier to use technology to do one of a few things. They can use it to develop applications. They can use it to configure automations, or they can use it to build data analysis models and tools. And they're able to do that to quickly drive value in an enterprise, hence the title of this whole presentation, which is How Grassroots Automation Speeds Digital Success. So that, in our mind, is a relatively good definition of citizen development. Now, why is this important? Because we need this talent. So Gartner supposed that last year, citizen developers in large enterprises would actually outnumber professional software developers by a factor of 4 to 1. And this, if their estimate was for last year, this was done a few years ago, and it's only probably been accelerated, and that margin is probably even larger than 4 to 1, just as a result of things like generative AI coming out and making it just that much easier to use this technology.
Unfortunately, those predictions are never actually measured, but whatever.
What? Are you saying analysts can make estimates and never have to go back and test them?
I would never say such a thing.
Shaken to the core, Tom.
Nor would vendors say anything.
Exactly. Well, so good segue. So interestingly, so Microsoft, the mega vendor, they see not only a gap, but a rapidly expanding gap between the software capabilities that we have and that we need. And so their estimate was by next year, you're looking at 160 million tech workers that just aren't in the market, that just don't exist while the need is there, because digital transformation is an imperative, because every company is a software company. So with that, I'll hand it off to Tom to talk more about the key trends that we saw in our research.
As we thought about this topic, I think it was originally Ian's idea. This is really happening because humans are becoming more technical. More and more people are familiar with information technology, and we all pretty much use it every day in the context of our mobile phones and our laptops and so on. And at the same time, there's been this long-term trend that technology is becoming more human-oriented. It's becoming easier to use. It's a point-and-click thing. It's a natural language thing, rather than having to understand complex programming languages. So I don't know exactly what what year the Citizen Event Horizon has taken place, but let's arbitrarily say that it's 2024, the year that our book is coming out on this topic. Let's hope that they coincide, where it just makes it much more easy for humans to do technical work. And of course, as Ian mentioned, the supply-demand gap is widening. There aren't enough IT and data experts. And even if it weren't widening, there's always been this long-standing understanding gap. The inability of business people to understand IT, of IT people to understand business. And one way to address that issue is for business people to learn enough about IT to do a lot of that work themselves. Tom Redman and I wrote another article that Lori edited in MIT Sloan Management Review on the need for connectors between these two groups. But you can really solve that problem in part by having humans who understand business also understand and use technology. As Ian said, we're kind of segmenting this group into several different categories. The umbrella term in the industry is citizen developer, but there are different types of citizen developers. The real citizen developers are people who build apps, either more traditional programs or web apps or something, mobile apps, something along those lines, using low code, more commonly no code software, and replacing the professional coding software development activity, or at least augmenting it in many cases. Citizen automators, which is the primary topic that our article in MIT SMR was about, are filling gaps, a couple of types of gaps. One is information gaps between systems in organizations that aren't connected well, that aren't integrated. So tools like robotic process automation move information from one system to another. And there are workflow gaps that can be automated by these tools. Relatively simple workflows can be created quite easily by citizens now, and they can create rules-based decision making. Increasingly, there's something called intelligent process automation, which uses some capabilities of AI, and that can also be used at times by citizen automators. And then my background is mostly in the data science area, and for a number of years, we've been arguing that data science is becoming more democratized with tools like automated machine learning, and now even more so generative AI. You can do some quite complex data science models with only citizen level skills, understanding the business problem and maybe having some degree of statistical knowledge. The other thing that falls into that category, which has been even more successful than citizen data science, is the idea of citizen data analysis, that we can create dashboards and visual displays of information quite easily with current tools, and I think that will even get easier with generative AI. So those are the sort of three categories that we see emerging of citizen-related activity. We won't talk about it at great length, but I think over time, these are coming together as tools like generative AI allow you to do any of these three activities. So there are a lot of tools that are used to make this work, and we certainly aren't listing all of the logos here, but under citizen development, Microsoft saw a big business opportunity here and assembled or bought up a number of tools and called it the Power Platform. It's a very rapidly growing tool, in part because a lot of organizations have it included with their enterprise software license from Microsoft, but it includes tools like Power Apps, Power Automate, Power BI, and several others, and now some of the Copilot AI-related tools as well. There are other companies like Airtable, Mendix, which is owned by Siemens. They like this capability so much that they bought the company. OutSystems was an early provider of low-code tools. So this, as I say, allows developers to create aspects of value chain automation with information systems, typically, transactionally oriented systems in many cases. Citizen automators have a whole variety of tools to choose from as well. Power Platform has Power Automate, as I mentioned. Blue Prism was one of the earlier adopters. Automation Anywhere and UiPath are the other two that have the most market share. And then you have companies like Celonis, which started in process mining, moving into the space. Some other companies that I don't know well, but Ian probably does, since that's his background.
Right. Yeah, intelligent document processing, process mining, process discovery, all, as you'd mentioned, that intelligent process automation, opening of the aperture to say RPA was just sort of executing transactional tasks, and yet it needed to interpret data up front, and it needed to make decisions about it after the fact. And so that combination has become the citizen automation toolkit.
Then in the citizen data science space, you have different aspects of data science. One is just pulling data together. Alteryx was an early entry into that space with some data blending tools, but it also does data analysis. Power BI from Microsoft, very successful as well. In fact, Power BI was originally a business intelligence tool for descriptive statistics and data analysis, but now has moved more into predictive models. And that's been true of other data visualization vendors like Qlik and Tableau. So maybe they should be on a list like this as well. And then you have more sophisticated tools for automated machine learning like H2O and Data Robot. Most of the cloud superscalers have automated machine learning tools as well. And so you can really do the whole gamut of activities, from collecting and cleansing and analyzing and displaying, interpreting and predicting based on data with these tools. We have another poll. Maybe those of you who weren't familiar with this technology didn't know you had access to these tools, but you've heard about Power BI or whatever. We're wondering, do you have any access to these kinds of capabilities, whether they're for citizen development, citizen automation, or citizen data analysis and science in your workplace? Maybe you're a citizen developer and you didn't even know it, which I suspect, Ian, is not an uncommon finding.
Right. We found that in our research that many people just were problem solvers that were using the technology at hand to solve the problem that was within their domain expertise. It wasn't until the name was told them many years later that they realized that's in fact what they were doing.
So this is starting to suggest that the majority, a slightly shrinking majority of people do have access to these tools in your workplace. So hopefully you'll be more motivated after this webinar to take advantage of them. Those who don't, you may want to start beating on the doors of your IT organization and ask for those kinds of tools so you too can be more productive and effective in your jobs. Let's pull down the poll quick before the majority disappears. And Ian is going to take over for a while and discuss some other aspects of this issue.
Perfect. So Tom touched on skills effectively. We decided, obviously, the worker of the future and the future of work needs these skills, needs to understand what's available. Their companies likely have some access to these tools. The question is, do the people in business, the non-IT, the citizens, do they have the skills necessary to be those citizen developers and data scientists? There's research that suggests that no, in some cases, we have a skill gap as well. Everest Research found that 60% of enterprises state that they've got a massive lack of technical skills given the pace of technology change. McKinsey found that executives seem to be aware of this, that 87% of the executives that they surveyed understood that they experienced skill gaps. Somewhat dishearteningly, less than half know what to do about it. Less than half are able to know how to address this problem. And in a massive and rather comprehensive report that the World Economic Forum put out recently about the future of work and the future of jobs, they found just an outstanding number of 1.2 billion employees need to adjust their skills to this new digital reality. And that is, that's only half of the global workforce. So
good news for your LinkedIn learning courses, Ian. I think
that's right.
Going to be a big upsurge.
That's right. I expect I have a few 100,000 people now. I need the other billion, and so. But I mean, that's an extraordinary statement about the fact that enterprises that have been championing digital and saying that they are digital, making acquisitions of it, who have invested in technology platforms, realize they just don't have the skills to deliver the full weight of this digital transformation that they understand is an imperative to survive in the future. So one of the things that we found in our research and our discussion with enterprises is there's an infinite number of ways that the citizen concept can embed within an enterprise. But quite simply, if you take the two ends of the scale, it's either a top-down mandate, it's executives that have a vision, they state a clear strategy, they put in place missions and goals, they have funding for it, there are actual projects, and they've initiated a program where they say to the organization, go ahead and citizen develop. The other way, which we've found quite a bit more often, is what we describe as the let 1,000 flowers bloom. And ultimately what that is that's those domain experts. That's that age-old battle between business and IT, where IT is just not listening, or they're too busy, or the lead time to get a project done is years. Business people are just pragmatically solving problems for themselves. They're applying their domain expertise, and they're using these tools that are becoming easier for them to use to solve problems. Now, often what that means is they're doing it in somewhat of a rogue gray IT manner, Right? They're hiding. They're surreptitiously doing this because they don't want their leadership, their boss, their manager, their executive, their IT department to know they're doing this. And so those are the two sort of simplistic ways to look at it. We've found that in most cases, what happens is you've got inspiration in the field. Those domain experts, they plant their seeds, they nurture these programs, and then eventually someone figures out that it's happening and realizes you got two options. You either shut this down, or you realize that it's valuable to the organization, and you figure out a way to state a top-down set of visions and goals and to encourage this behavior.
Yeah, it's a 1,000 flowers. When those bottom-up approaches work well, it's 5 or 10 or 20 when they don't work so well, and they sort of wither on the vine. It's
right.
And
so what we did was we were trying to figure out. Obviously, we believe that this is valuable. This is going to be a resource enterprises have to tap into, is the domain expertise and the larger technology capability to transform them. So what do you need in place to do this successfully? And so as you take a look at an organization and the way that it's structured, we approached it with sort of 3 classifications of center. And our first one is a center of enterprise execution. And these effectively exist in every large enterprise. This is like your IT department. It is an enterprise function. It handles your enterprise technology systems. You also have risk and compliance. You have legal. Those are centers of enterprise execution. And then in most cases, enterprises have centers of excellence that seem to have sort of proliferated over the years. You often find a center of excellence that's focused on things like continuous improvement. You find one that's focused on robotic process automation. Oftentimes, it's opened its aperture to now be an intelligent automation center of excellence. You probably have an AI ML center of excellence. You may have all sorts of flavors of data centers of excellence. Unfortunately, a lot of our research suggests none of those centers talk to each other. There's very separate fiefdoms, and that's probably detracting from the collective value that could be contributed to an enterprise if they did cooperate. And then finally, you've got this concept of center of influence. And effectively, that's where the citizens live. That's every department within a business. That's the finance team, it's the HR team, it's the supply chain logistics team, the customer support and care team. Every one of those is the business folks who are the domain experts who know that they need help. They've been asking for it in many cases. And so that's where you're going to find a lot of your citizenry. But to do this successfully, you need to really take into consideration all those centers, and you need to find ways to do what many have been calling fusion teams to bring these capabilities together. IT always has to be involved if you want this to be secure and safe and compliant, because a citizen, if they're not well trained and if they're not given the right guardrails, can do all sorts of harm. You then probably want to involve these centers of excellence, the continuous improvement, because they just look at process. Their expertise is process understanding, process efficiency, and making things more lean. And then you, in many cases, want sort of a cross-domain group of folks too, where you want HR and supply chain working together, or finance and legal. There's a value in them collaborating, and this is enabling them to all collaborate because these citizens are able to have more productive discussions where they're turning these ideas into actual actionable applications or automations within the enterprise. So this brings us to our third poll. And this one is to ask, have you participated in any citizen development initiatives within your organization? So to build on Tom's point, some of you weren't aware that this was a thing at the beginning, but you may now realize, oh, I've actually been doing this. I just didn't call it that. Many of you seem to have some access to tools. So then our question to you is, are you doing this? So options are yes, with the support and awareness of my organization, or yes, but as I mentioned, surreptitiously, you're in the shadows. You don't want anyone to know you're doing it. Or I tried, but was stopped, which we've seen as IT becomes aware of your roguery, your shadow IT activity. Or finally, straight up no.
And I must say, we do have a way to identify you rogues out there, and we're going to be sending the IT police to visit you right after this webinar is over.
That's right. That's the entire purpose of this webinar. We've been hired by IT to flesh you out and to pursue you.
We're the Federal Bureau of Citizen Prosecution.
We need a badge, Tom. I'll do that next. I'll design a badge. But it's interesting because in the early days of RPA, where many of my examples come from, the pioneers used to stand on stage and say to rooms of others interested in learning about RPA, quote unquote, my IT team doesn't even know I'm doing this. And obviously that didn't live long because IT would figure out you're doing it. But the only way to really do these projects in the early days was to do it surreptitiously, which is a shame. I think much of our research and much of our proposal is that IT needs to really evolve because this is going to happen no matter what.
After we said we were going to arrest the rogues, the numbers started dropping. I see.
That is called influencing your research. So I will leave you with one quote because we found this interesting. But ultimately, as we said, you without the right training and without the right structure, many perceive this citizen initiative to possibly be dangerous. And we actually had a discussion. If we can pull the poll down, so I can move forward. We had a discussion with a head of data science who described this quite simply as we try to keep sharp knives out of the hands of children. Obviously, the children being the business people and the sharp knives being, in this case, citizen data tools. And so that is a perception that it needs to be contended with because some leadership in IT and in this case in data science functions within a business are really reticent to invite the business domain experts into this activity. So with that,
as I said to this person, the problem is that the knives that children already have are getting sharper and sharper every day. So
right.
You can't really maintain that strategy. And he did admit that was the case.
Right. So what do we need, Tom?
We need the 4Gs, Ian. So
very nice.
We did not put this in the article because we hadn't, I guess, done enough research yet. But the 4Gs are ways that you empower citizens to do this work, empower or enable or whatever. People typically talk about this in terms of governance, but our experience is no citizen has ever said to us, no citizen developer has said to us, we want more governance. People don't like the idea of being governed, so we're trying to sort of season that a bit with some other approaches to making the right things happen in this regard. So Genesis, of course, is how you get going with these programs. And as Ian said, they're basically top-down or bottom-up alternatives. Maybe if it's a top-down program, you'll have a formal launch and some PR and vision statements and goals and roadshows and change management and an empowered sponsor, a funded champion role and a support organization. Or maybe you don't have any of those things at the beginning and they develop over time, or maybe it withers away. But there are varying approaches to Genesis with a lot of different impacts. Guidance is, I think, a much more useful thing to offer from the perspective of citizens anyway than governance. And that's helping people know what skills are necessary, providing them with training, identifying career paths for people who end up being, kind of hybrid IT people and business people, certifications so they can get good jobs elsewhere if you don't have a career path for them. And rewards and incentives is a big issue. We found that we found some very productive citizens who were able to make millions and millions, sometimes hundreds of millions of extra dollars for their organizations with some of the citizen developed programs they were involved in. And they would get things like, a picture with the CEO and a $50 gift card for the things that the organization sells. So that does not really motivate you to work hard at these kinds of programs. So we need to figure out better incentives and rewards. Governance, there's sometimes where we really have to come down fairly hard. Are these activities aligned with what the business wants to do? Do we have risk? I mean, Ian mentioned the whole risk issue. We haven't actually found cases of citizen development really going off the rails, but it certainly is a possibility. Some companies have created zone-based standards where, green applications are those that you can do whatever you want. Yellow needs some supervision, and red, forget about it. IT has to do that. And then ownership and handoff rules before people leave organizations and leave their departments or whatever, holding the bag with no documentation. And then guardrails are typically things built into systems that provide standards and security protocols and scorecards, basically making it easy to do the right thing. And knowledge management and kind of a library of components and modules is very helpful in this regard too. There are risks to think about, as one of our interviewees in a large company said. Have we prepared for when 30% of the finance organization and systems are being run by citizens? And they were not, and most organizations are not, but some organizations are moving really aggressively in this regard and need to develop scenarios for, dealing with that kind of situation. There are certainly risks, failure to document what citizens are doing, and then they leave. Risky integration with existing enterprise systems may lead to cybersecurity issues. Maybe we'll automate bad process workflows. We found a few of those, nothing really catastrophic, and mistakes in developing automations. One company was one telecom company was sending out way too many iPhones, but I think they got them back eventually, didn't they, Ian? Anyway, they're still in business.
They're still in business. They didn't get a lot of them back.
But there are rewards, of course, as well. This makes jobs a lot more appealing, and employees are more engaged. It upskills them. They can provide a better customer experience. Cost reduction. Typically, it's less expensive for citizens to develop these tools than IT people. And in many cases, particularly if we're talking about citizen data science, there's some real innovation involved. And even for automation, what did you call it? A sort of prototyping the future business in many cases, Ian, before we're ready to build expensive integrated systems.
Right. And that was a CIO of a company who, when I was explaining RPA to her way of describing it was business users who were able to prototype the future state. Like, this is what I'd like to see, even if the ERP system wasn't able to do that yet. So,
and I think we'll see lots of scientific breakthroughs in pharmaceutical firms, for example, for people who are hybrid, PhD biologists and who have some data science skills.
Right.
We've talked to a number of companies like that. So we have some quick case studies. These are basically just to show how far along some companies are. We wrote about Johnson & Johnson a fair amount in the article, but a quite broad program of, quote, intelligent automation. This is a big collaboration between IT and the global business services organization, primarily focused on cost reduction in broad end-to-end processes. The executive committee is on board. Lots of J&J business units and processes, including R&D, which doesn't usually embrace these kind of process changes. Started out with consultants and professionals and have largely switched to citizens doing a lot of the work. Their goal was $500 million in savings over 3 years. They achieved that, and they're about to deliver 1 billion over 5 years, and the next goal I think was 2 billion. We were just told, right, Ian?
Right.
So that's number one. Number two is a combination of data science and automation capabilities. Again, we did write about this in the article. AT&T has encouraged both. Lots of reusable data sets, a huge feature store, tons of training. They have various social events, automation summits, citizen developer forums, AI democratization summits, and 92% of their automation bots have been developed by citizens. They say they've saved 16 million minutes of labor each year, and 20x ROI from these citizen programs. One that was not really in our SMR article, but is probably one of the best top-down initiatives is from Shell, where in 2019, their IT organization said, we're starting a DIY program. They thought if they called it citizen, people would think it was about learning how to vote. There's a related effort in citizen data science. I put a VP in charge, an organization to support it. Big reliance on their vendor, it turned out to be Microsoft. They were the ones who at least popularized, if not developed, that 3-zone approach. They have a DIY exchange for apps and components and lots of training. They say from the beginning they had 10x returns, and they have an IT team of supporting this of 40 people with 200 coaches around the world, 4,000 active citizens so far. And one big advantage that you see in a lot of these programs, much closer collaboration between IT and citizens on major development projects.
Right. A truly mature example. So in the last sort of few seconds before we go to Q&A, we probably led the witness on this one, but we'll ask you, having seen what we just shared in the case studies we just showed you, do you believe that empowering business users as citizen automators and developers and data analysts can actually bring value to your organization? And the options are, yes, absolutely. B, yes, with some reservations. C, maybe too early to tell. D, no, it's a fad and it won't stick. And E, no, it's too risky.
If we get too many D and E responses, we'll just dispense with the Q&A, I guess.
That's right. That's right. You and I have thoroughly failed to convey the message.
So far, so good.
Yeah. I mean, again, some of those, as you said, with the examples like Shell and J&J and AT&T, truly mature initiatives where they had put a lot of executive thinking and strategic planning behind it, have really formalized training. Still working on some of the incentives, as you noted, but have seen tremendous benefits as a result. That
data science leader who said we won't give sharp knives to children is in the bottom category. It's right. Too risky. I didn't know he was participating in the webinar, but
in the webinar, yeah, he's the 1%. Yeah, no, I mean it's again this. Some of what Tom and I are looking at now is just the imperative of IT to evolve. Just because this train has, in a lot of cases, left the station. There's really no way to. I guess I'll change analogies. There's no way to put this toothpaste back in the tube,
or put these IT applications back in the shadows. They're
right.
Out into the light.
Right. So then the imperative is to use those 4Gs and to help guide and to create safe guardrails and the governance that enables successful citizenry, because it's happening no matter what. So I think with that, there's one more slide which really just sort of drives home the point that we've spoken to a lot of organizations or surveyed them through various different means. And so there are major brands, there are large organizations all over the planet that have some form or another of citizen initiative. And as Tom mentioned, they call them different things. It's DIY, or it's embedded, or it's enabled, or they're creators, or they're super SMEs, one organization called them. But this is in fact going on in small, medium, and very, very large industrialized ways across the globe in major enterprises.
BMW, for example, is training 80,000 people in citizen-related skills, which is quite a substantial number.
It's tremendous. So with that, we can probably head to Q&A and see what people have to ask us about.
Don't we want to encourage people to contact us in the Q&A and elsewhere before we abandon?
Yes, this is where we plug. Follow Tom and me on LinkedIn. You can get in touch with us that way. Because as Tom had mentioned, we are continuing our research. We've done 2 different articles on this topic. We continue to have discussions, and we really are looking for interesting stories. We're looking to hear from you if you are a citizen, to hear from you if you're one of those executives that's done a top-down mandate that's structured how citizenry is going to bloom within your organization. Please do get in touch, because we want to talk to you.
We'd like to write about your heroic efforts.
That's right.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tom and Ian. Great presentation. I liked the examples, and I really enjoyed the description of the business leader saying that the business users were prototyping the future with these tools. That's a really interesting way to think about this. I'd like to remind everyone that we are going to have the recording and the presentation after the webinar. So let's dive into the Q&A. So for the folks who are new to this and are intrigued by the idea of their colleagues prototyping the future, what would be the first steps to launching a citizen program in their organization?
Do you want me to take that, Tom?
Sure. I think somebody needs to think about what the 4 Gs are going to be in the organization. How are we going to kick this off? Who's going to be doing it? What kinds of risks do we face as an organization? So I think ideally it would be some combination of a group of business people, as at J&J, the global business services people and IT people getting together and say, what do we have to gain? What do we have to lose? And how do we construct a program to make this happen? If you're in a much smaller organization, just get a couple of people together and figure out how we can make this work. But it doesn't need to be hugely expensive. It doesn't need to have a huge amount of bureaucracy. You can get started quite quickly with this. And I think that's part of the appeal of citizen development. It can happen quickly, so you don't want to put a lot of obstacles in its way.
Right. I would add that it's an interesting question, because how do you start something that's already begun? In most cases, this is already, again, these are these 1,000 flowers blooming. They're already happening in enterprises. And so a successful way to start is just to further sort of share the awareness of the fact that it exists as a concept, and then go look for who those inspired domain experts are within your enterprise who are doing this. May not know that they're citizen developers or automators or data scientists yet. And when you find them, don't shut them down, right? Don't block it and penalize them. Learn from them and use them as a showcase and as champions for a broader initiative within the organization, using the 4 Gs, of course.
So that leads into our next question, which is, how do you identify the right people to help these flowers bloom? How do you scout out the right people in your organization who can become ambassadors for the program and really make it take off?
Right. That's usually not very hard, because they self-present. Usually it's people who are passionate about both pointing out inefficiency and about addressing them. And a lot of our interviews with people, it was very personal for them. They loved solving problems for their teams. And so they would stay up late at night and work all weekend to try to figure out how to use Excel or Access or some tool that they had available at the time to solve problems. And so they're making themselves known in that way.
They've probably been a thorn in the side of the IT organization for
that.
A while. And you can also look at, well, who's really incredibly productive at their tasks, because chances are pretty good they are citizens. And this can cut both ways. I think Ian found early on these discussion boards on places like Reddit and Discord for the overemployed people who use tools like this to hold down multiple overlapping remote work jobs, but they're so productive, nobody knows that they're being paid 2 or 3 or 4 times their salaries.
Right. And this spoke to and inspired our investigation into the incentive problem of just how are you rewarding these people for their creativity? And if you don't, then they find ways to reward themselves appropriately.
Yeah. There are also people who are known within their teams for speed, right? These are the folks who are known to blast past some obstacles that other people don't get past.
Right.
So I think that would be a good cue.
In the past, they were using Excel macros or something like that, and now they're using more sophisticated tools.
Right.
I'll add on too, because as we asked people how they did find those people who were the right candidates for being part of the citizen team, some of them do logic tests. And there was one discussion we had of he said that the people who scored highest in the logic test early on in the admission process were the ones who stuck around the longest. They really did find the work rewarding. Every enterprise is a culture. And so, with some of the oil and gas companies, that enterprise is very engineering oriented. So it's got an engineer culture. So a lot more people have some of the sort of the preconditions to be citizens, whereas other cultures might not have as many. But there are citizens in every department, every business unit, every company.
Absolutely. Certainly well beyond engineering. All right. So Moritz, one of our viewers, asks, could you talk more about guidance, especially skill mapping and training? A lot of executives don't know where to start with skill mapping and training for these citizen development efforts.
Well, one area that you could use to start is to say, okay, what kinds of citizen development are we interested in creating? So from a kind of a technology side, the technologies for low code, no code application development and automation and data science tend to be different. So that would be one sort of segmentation you'd make. And even within data science, as I was mentioning, there's data analysis, data visualization, data modeling, data prediction, machine learning, et cetera. So kind of levels even within each of those. In areas like automation, you have some people need to be pursuing process improvement capabilities at the same time they're doing automation. And then you start to cut it by the different functional business domains. Do we have people in supply chain who have these capabilities? Do we have people in finance? So it can lead to a fairly complex, matrix of different skills that would be helpful in this regard.
Yeah. Makes me think of your book, Only Humans Need Apply, Tom, as far as also you've got.
Thanks, and I'll send you that $25, I promise.
There we go. Everyone should check out. It is one of the 23 books that Tom has written that you should buy every one of them because they're all outstanding. But in that one, he speaks about blue and red people. We always talk about people who are technical or they're more sort of creative. And every one of them has a role to play. I mean, there could be people in your customer care and support department who are just good listeners. They're just empathetic and they understand the problem that is often happening with your product or service. That's as valuable as somebody who's just a numbers person who loves staring at spreadsheets and can find ways to analyze data in a different way.
Well, absolutely, because people like that see where the sticking points in the process are, and they see the pain points for the customers. So They certainly have a lot to bring to those discussions. Say
one thing. I see Noel Carroll's name in the chat, and you might want to take a look at his quite good article on what Shell has done in this regard in MISQ Executive. I think it's in the public domain, not behind a paywall, and it's quite a good story about Shell.
Terrific. That's great for folks who want to learn more about Shell.
Okay.
One more question here from Vijay. This is a good question. From a governance perspective, is it better to vet the citizen project before it is launched or when it is in semi-production?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so this is interesting. So, and Tom referred to this too. There's levels of project, and sort of the simplest way that my simple brain looks at it is the sort of the me and the we projects, and there are other statuses of the green and yellow and red that Tom referred to. There are some projects that are literally just automating a task you do on your desktop that's pretty discrete, and even if it went haywire, wouldn't cause very much trouble. And then there are those larger processes, those workflows that do touch other systems or reach outside of your particular function or even outside of the company. And so for a governance perspective, it's imperative that you have that classification system so that individuals can have a sandbox where they can safely tinker and automate. And yet, if it reaches a scale where it's starting to touch data or other systems or other company systems, then you absolutely need to put it through all of the rigor that you would expect it needed to go through to ensure compliance and safety and rigor.
And so who is running that sandbox? That's someone in IT with an eye to the governance and security issues, right?
It depends. We've seen this is again that spectrum of as many options as there are companies you talk to. Sometimes this is born within IT and they control it. Other times we've seen citizen initiatives that are owned by the CFO and report up to finance. Oftentimes we see IT trying to claim ownership of these things. So ultimately they end up under IT. There's one example where a leader left and IT grabbed it and brought it in. But the common denominator needs to be that IT is always informed and involved, just because this is touching their systems.
Right. Okay. I think we have time for one last question. This is a fun one. Olivera asks, what advantages do citizen developers bring to teams compared to traditional developers?
Well, they understand both sides of the equation, I think, is the primary advantage. They know what the problems are in supply chain, and they know something about how technology can help to make them better. And I think in many cases, we're going to see hybrids. Someone we talked to from a big insurance company, he was a chief information officer, said increasingly when I walk into meetings, I have a really hard time telling whether people are IT people or business people because they're both converging toward the middle. And I think that would be a great situation for many organizations.
Yes. Traditionally, IT projects have a very high failure rate, and it's because of the lack of overlap between domain expertise and knowing what it is you're trying to actually solve and understanding the tools you're solving it with. And to Tom's point, with citizenry, there's almost 100% overlap in that Venn diagram.
Well, if more of our audience can bring this back to their organizations, we'll see more of them prototyping the future with IT and hopefully making those rates improve.
So you probably have to go now, Lori, to develop a new circulation management system for loan management review.
We'll have to take that discussion offline. Ian and Tom, thank you so much. This has been very educational today. Thanks also to our audience for the great questions and for being so engaged in the chat. And thank you to our sponsor, HCL Software. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone. Thanks very much.